Welcome, I'm Lauren from Zestful Kitchen, and welcome to Everyday Gourmet. Okay, today we're going to be making a bourbon pecan pie that is absolutely luscious. It's made with maple syrup instead of corn syrup. So good. And it also happens to be a recipe that I developed for Cuisine at Home when I worked there. So delicious. We're going to start with the flaky crust that also has bourbon in it. And the way we get it to be super flaky is to use both butter and shortening. That's key. So we're going to start by measuring our flour. And I'm going to weigh the flour because that's the easiest way to weigh flour consistently. If you're using a cup measure, I would recommend fluffing the flour a little bit and then spooning and leveling. That's going to get you the most accurate measurement. But today we're going to be using a scale. We are going to add a little bit of sugar, just a little bit. There's a ton of sugar in this pie. Obviously, that's a pecan pie. So you don't want the crust to be that sweet. You almost want it to be verging on savory to balance out all that sweetness. You can skip this too if you don't want to add it. Then we're going to add just a half a teaspoon of salt. Before we start cutting in the fat, I'm going to combine some ice cold water. So we need 3 tablespoons of ice water. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of bourbon, and we're going to put this in the fridge for it to chill. If you have the forethought and you can put your bourbon in the fridge, then you wouldn't have to do this ahead of time. Oh! Okay, that's going to be our 2 tablespoons. Oopie. Okay, we're gonna put this in the fridge to chill. You want the liquids to be really cold because it'll keep the whole dough nice and chilled. So we're gonna do that. So while that's chilling, we're gonna put in our cold butter and our shortening. And we're gonna do this by hand. We're using a pastry brush. I'm just gonna stir together that salt, sugar, and flour. And then I'm gonna take my shortening that's cold and just cut it into shards. Okay. Woo. All right, and then I'm gonna add that to the flour. And then we're gonna do 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's been diced. Now we're gonna work this in by hand. So this is more of a traditional pie crust that's a little bit more work. It just makes for a super flaky crust to do it by hand. If you really don't wanna do that, you can do this in a food processor, but I like the control this allows you. You want the fat to turn into pea-sized pieces. So pretty big still, you're not gonna be doing this forever, but it'll take a bit of time. Whew. That looks great. We have our chilled watery bourbon, and I'm just gonna drizzle it over top. And I like to drizzle around the edges of the bowl, actually. I think it just incorporates better when it's like that. And then just kind of toss it together. You wanna get everything at least a little moistened, and then we can start seeing if it's gonna hold together. Press it against the sides of the bowl. It shouldn't hold together completely. You don't want your dough to be wet. It should still be kind of crumbly and shaggy like this, but it should hold together. And if it's not, then you might need just a little drizzle of water. It will be largely dependent on the humidity of your kitchen as well. So I'm gonna add just a tiny bit, like a half a tablespoon. That was hardly any. I'm gonna press it into a rough ball if I can, and then we're gonna put it onto a piece of plastic wrap. And form it into a 4-inch disc or so. You just want it to be thin enough that it's easy to roll out. Ooh. That looks good. All right. Pat it into a round, and then we'll use the plastic wrap to just kind of smooth the edges. But it's a nice way to wrangle all those crumbly bits. And then we'll put this in the fridge for about 30 minutes to chill. So now we're gonna roll it out, and I'm going to put a little bit of flour on our counter. You can do this between 2 pieces of parchment paper if you don't wanna add extra flour, totally up to you. I just prefer the flour. I think it's easier. It also helps that I'm using a stone countertop. If you do not have one, it might be a good idea to do parchment paper, just because stone tends to be a little cooler in temperature. And I'm just gonna roll it out to a 13-inch round. You can smell the bourbon in it. All right, and it's possible that it will crack. That's okay, you can just go in and mend it. It's helpful to rotate it as you're rolling it out to make sure it's not sticking to your countertop. And because I recommend rolling from the center out, it just makes for a more evenly round pie crust when you do it that way. So many flakes of fat in there, it's gonna be so good. 13. Since this one has so much fat in it, I'm gonna roll it around the rolling pin. You can do it this way to transfer to your pie plate, or you can fold it into fourths. But I find with this that is made with shortening, it's a little bit more delicate than one that's made with all butter. Shimmy it around so it's in there evenly. Lift up on the edges and just push it into the plate. You don't want to pull it to re-center it, or you could tear it, but you do want to kind of push it into the edges of the pan. And then I always use 2 fingers to press it in. Okay. And then we're going to trim up the edges just so they're even. And you can use any of these trimmings to plug up a hole if you have a tear in the crust. So like if there's a tear in the center somewhere, you can always use some of these trimmings. And then I'm just going to fold under the edges and make sure the edges sit on top of the overhang or the lip of the pie plate. This is going to help when it bakes, that it doesn't shrink and fall down the sides of the pan. This will kind of help hold it up. Okay, and then we're going to go in and we're going to crimp. So I just use a finger, fold it into 2 fingers. You can also use a fork and you can just press it down along the edge. Or you could just basically, if you're folding under, you could just press it together and crimp it like that and call it a day. The fats in there are already kind of melting, so we want to get this in the fridge. We are going to crimp the bottom. Am I centered? We're going to crimp the bottom of the crust just a few times, and then we're going to chill it for an hour in the fridge. All right, into the fridge she goes. She's so pretty. Our crust has chilled for at least an hour. So now we're going to blind bake it. And so you just need a large piece of parchment paper right in the center. And then you need baking weights or dry beans or rice or a mix of the things. I always use dry beans because they're really affordable, and baking weights I find are so expensive, and you need a lot of them. So just put this right in the middle. And then I press it down and into the sides. The goal of the blind baked crust is to start the cooking process so it has time to crisp up and become flaky before you put something wet in, like a pecan pie filling. And then with this one in particular, you want there to be enough weight that you also are pressing against the sides, not just the bottom. So some blind baked crusts will just have weights on the bottom. But this one you need to kind of fill the whole pie plate because you want those sides to, again, stay up instead of melting down, if that makes sense. So if you don't have enough, then I would kind of push them towards the sides. But that's it. And then we're going to put it in the oven, bottom rack, 400 degrees for 25 minutes. And then we will remove the weights and bake it a little bit more. Our pie crust has been baking for 25 minutes. And now I'm going to remove the parchment paper. And I have this on standby to catch it. Gorgeous. Look at her. She smells good. We need to brush it with a little bit of egg white. And I'm going to just whisk that up really quick. All right, I'm going to brush the egg white all over the bottom and up the sides. And what this is going to do is it's going to seal the crust a little bit so the moisture from the pecan filling won't sog out this crust that we've worked so hard to make crispy. So now she goes back in for 10 minutes until dry to touch and golden brown. Okay. Oh, yeah. She's perfect. Our crust out of the oven, cooled. Now we're gonna make the really simple but delicious filling. So we're gonna start with a cup of dark brown sugar. Dark brown is ideal because it has more flavor than light brown, but either will work if you have light brown on hand. Then we have a cup of pure maple syrup. Make sure it's pure, not pancake syrup. And then we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of molasses. And we're going to cook this just to dissolve the sugar. I would recommend using just a regular molasses or a bold flavored molasses, but not an unsulfured molasses. I'm going to whisk this up and then we will heat it. To the stove we go. It should go from being kind of grainy to just really smooth and luscious. To this, we're going to add a few things. We're going to add 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. All right, that'll just make it glossy. And then we're gonna add a tablespoon of vanilla extract. It's important to add this after you've cooked the filling. It'll just retain more flavor. And then we're gonna do a tablespoon of our bourbon. Is it 2 tablespoons or 1? 2 tablespoons of bourbon. I'll try not to over measure this time. Oh, spilled. That's in, and then we need a little bit of salt. So the nice thing about this filling is it uses maple syrup instead of cornstarch. They act the same, but maple syrup just has more flavor. So you're gonna get more of that toasty, mapley flavor than you would from corn syrup. Okay, so a couple things about this. What are we doing this recipe? A lot of pecan pies either have all chopped or all whole. This one has best of both worlds. The base of it is chopped, and then we finish it off with whole pecans, which A, make it beautiful, but B, you get a little bit more of a texture variance. Roughly chop 1 cup, and they just need to be roughly chopped. It doesn't have to be finely. The bigger they are, the crunchier the pie will be. And these pecans are lightly toasted. So I toasted them for about 8 minutes at 350. You don't want them to be deeply toasted because they will continue to toast in the oven. So by toasting them ahead of time, you're going to impart a ton of flavor, but you don't want it to be overly toasted. Toasting also helps make them crunchier. If you add them raw, it'll be a little bit more soft. We're going to add these to the filling and then just mix it up. So this is the base of the filling. And now we're going to work on the topping. So we need 1 more cup of pecan halves, again, toasted. Let me just make sure I have everything. So butter, bourbon, vanilla, salt. Oh, I forgot to put the eggs in. So we need to add some eggs to the filling so that it sets up and holds. So I'm just going to use my butter bowl. I'm going to crack my eggs in here just to be safe. Break them up so it's easier. Okay. Then into the filling it goes. That looks good. Don't forget the eggs, like I almost did. We're gonna toss the pecans that aren't chopped with 1 tablespoon of bourbon and 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. If you don't want to use bourbon in this, you certainly do not have to, but I like the layer of flavors it adds. This will also make for a really shiny top. So it's not just adding flavor, but it's gonna make the pecans that are arranged on top super shiny. It's gonna be tempting to put all of this in. You certainly can. You are gonna run the risk of it slightly overfilling or overflowing during baking if your crust has shrunk at all. I would just say slowly add it to the crust so it doesn't flow over. Now the filling is viscous enough that it surprisingly holds the pecans on top. I'm just gonna arrange these over top in a circle and spiral all the way in. This pie bakes for an hour. We get a little whipped cream in there. Oh my gosh. The crust is so flaky, it just falls apart. And I will say, the booziness of it adds so much depth of flavor. It's sweet, but it's not so saccharinely sweet like so many pecan pies are. It has depth of flavor, it has nuance. It's just, there's so much more going on with it than a normal pecan pie. So if you like pecan pie, you'll love this. If you don't like pecan pie, I think you'll like it. I would never order pecan pie, but if it's this, I would definitely be ordering it. It is so delicious. I hope you enjoy this. Let me know if you make it. You can find all of the information in the caption below, the link to the recipe, some tips and tricks, and meet me back here next week for another Everyday Gourmet. I still feel like I'm squinting. Oh.